program. We are actually streaming live via Skype, so we're not actually in the studio at the moment. So, of course, we're using the maximus of technology, which is a good thing. As you know, the COVID situation has not been dying down anytime soon. As a matter of fact, I was reading this article that says that Stacia cases started to skyrocket. So I know Stacia was very proud of not having any cases. But in the Daily Herald it said that the several businesses and syndications have changed how they offer services to their customers as a result of the recent surge in COVID-19 cases on the island. So it says local telecommunication company UTEL NV closed its offices because one of its employees had been in direct contact with someone who tested positive for COVID-19. So you can see that everywhere is going to be affected. Once you have people moving in and out, there's of course always that chance, that big chance that you will catch the COVID-19. And the news is also said that JetBlue is set to fly Newark to St. Martin this November. Let us hope that by November things kind of die down a bit, but nonetheless, it says that JetBlue Airways Corp said on Thursday it will add 24 routes later this year as the airline looks to generate cash, and said it plans to fly some temporarily parked jets to the new destinations. The new routes will be in the regions where the company anticipates increasing demand for leisure travel, JetBlue said. The routes include flights to Aruba and St. Martin out of Newark Liberty International Airport in New Jersey. According to the website of the U.S. airline, the first flight to St. Martin will depart on Thursday, November 19 at 9 a.m. in the morning and arrive on the friendly island at 2:21 in the afternoon. The flight will be daily with an Airbus A321 and includes JetBlue Mint service. That's good news. So JetBlue also has a flight to St. Martin out of JFK, New York, once a week. So that's some good news to look forward to. But this COVID thing is really having us. You have to really pay attention to it because I saw that cases has been dropping, and the last thing we want that they spike back up again. And I think Angola is supposed to be opening in October, I believe. So let's see what's going to happen over there in Angola when they do open up. The Minister of Finance said that there was 559 companies that applied for June payroll support. He says that the payroll support and payments has begun actual Edion during the live virtual Council of Ministers press briefing on Wednesday. There have been 325 applications for the St. Martin Stimulus and Relief Plan, Unemployment and Income Support Program so far. The deadline to apply is Tuesday, September 15th. So if you have not done so, folks, go ahead and do that. The Unemployment and Income Support Programs pay 1,150 guilders per month to qualifying individuals, and persons must resubmit monthly. The Saman Development Foundation and Social and Health Insurances as they are cross-referencing the application for duplicates, said Edion. To apply for income support, persons will need a completed application form, a valid St. Martin issued ID or passport, or expired no more than 6 months, a valid copy of the Chamber of Commerce and Industry registration. This is only required from sole proprietors not older than 6 months, a copy of a valid or not expired more than 6 months as of application date, and vending permit of any kind, bus or taxi license. A tax office stamped copy of the 2019 income tax return is also required. To apply for unemployment support, persons will need a completed application form, a valid St. Martin issued ID or passport, or expired no more than 6 months, an original letter of termination or dismissal on company letterhead with company stamp, and a copy of the applicant's last payslip from a payroll system with the company's name clearly visible. That last part seems to be problematic in some areas for some people. I guess if they have the company is not doing things legally or whatever, legitimately, that would always be a problem for most persons to, of course, get. Today we're going to touch a bit on something called the. First, I'm going to have Ray Dalio touch a little bit about his history to some extent. So we don't think that what's happening today, it's a one-off something. He will touch that on it's happening throughout history. So he go briefly into that. And then in today, the rest of the program, we will talk about business planning and how to do a business plan, and what are some of the key ingredients that you have to have in order to make a business successful. So let's get into that right away. And then to help me, I will just share my screen so we can start cracking on that. Um, okay, so let me go ahead and share this screen. Okay. Stop sharing. Okay, let me see here. Close this out. Having some problems with this screen. Okay, here we go. With some technical problem, I suppose. Okay. In the studio, can you see the presentation by chance? One second. Okay, so let's get cracking. Now, there was something that Robert Kiyosaki came up with in one of his books or one of his articles, and he called it the best business systems excel in all 8 integrities of the rich dad's BI triangle. And what is BI triangle basically represents, of course, is like a pyramid, and on the outskirts of the pyramids you have 3 core systems of integrities, which is the team, leadership, and the mission. So this is the core that surrounds the BI triangle. And you need to understand, of course, you always have to know what your mission is. You have to have good leadership and, of course, good team players. And then within the BI triangle, they have the support systems. And the support systems now are cash flow, communications, systems, legal, the best business systems, excel, and product. So in other words, he's saying that so you can have the core, the mission, the team, and the leadership. However, you have a number of things you have to properly manage, which is the product, legal, systems, communications, and cash flow. Now, if you look at the triangle, the product is actually to the top, which is actually the smallest component. Now, most people would think that once you have a good product, that's where it stops. However, there's a lot of good products out there. You know what I mean? So the product is not the main thing. There's so many other things that entails when it comes to a business, and a lot of us fail in a lot of these systems. From the 8 integrities, there are a number of us that who have businesses or who want to start a business are not equipped, because a lot of some of these integrities are not strong in the organization, and therefore the business would more than likely fail. So he says here that 9 out of 10 businesses fail in the first 5 years. He also said that the product is the smallest part of the BI triangle, because the product is to the top, more to the top, whereas the other components is lower and takes a bigger part of the triangle. It's more bigger in size. He says, for example, in legal, you have a number of things. You have taxes, employees, patents, trademarks, copyrighted, and so forth, because some people don't even consider copyrights and trademarks and patents, because if you have a business and if you want to at least have your business not copyrighted for a number of years so you can stay profitable, you have to actually spend money and take care of these legal issues, or legal matters rather. Then you have systems. So you have different systems. You have accounting systems. You have production systems, distribution systems, marketing systems, and so forth. And you have communication. So you have marketing and sales as a communication. You also have internal communication. How do you dialogue amounts, the employees and so forth. A good example of this is when I did an internship in Holland for I think it was called Minor Planet Systems or something like that. Can't remember the exact name now. But that company used to do tracking devices for these trucks used to carry like cargo and so forth to the different European countries and so forth. And they wanted to track to see if the persons driving these trucks used to stay on the route. And surprisingly, when we installed a few of them, you would see these guys sometimes stop off by other homes, probably the chicks or the girlfriends or whatever, and they would tend to delay the trip, so to speak, and so forth. So by having these tracking systems, they can track what's going on, and if anything, the person driving would have to pay back because it's loss of time, using the company's fuel and so forth. And so that was one of the things we did. However, we had some problems sometimes when I had to call the company and saying, okay, why didn't you pay for the service last month or whatever? And then there was a communication that said, but how do you expect us to pay if we reported the system was not working, we had issues with the system and no one came out to fix it? You see, so that was a miscommunication within the department. So one department is saying sales, 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 go and sell, 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 and then the technical department couldn't keep up with the glitches and resolve glitches on time or whatever. But there was no communication between sales department and the technical department. So sales is saying sell, sell, sell. Technical department don't have enough manpower or whatever, or not able to fix in time, wasn't communicated in time, and so there was a whole big ruckus when it came to the client. You know what I mean? So this is also part of our communications. Now, cash flow deals with the management of cash flow management, financing needs. Also, if you have excess cash, what do you do with it? Do you just keep it in a bank account, or what do you do? So all this is about the cash flow. When you're talking about cash flow management and so forth. Now it says in terms of the cash flow always follows management. If any of the management functions of the BI triangle's 5 internal levels, so as cash flow, communication, systems, legal, and product, are weak, the company will be weak. If you are personally having financial difficulty or not having the excess cash flow you desire, you can often find the weak spots by analyzing each level. Once you identify your weaknesses, you may then want to consider turning it into your strength or hiring someone else with that strength. For example, another good thing about when it comes to accounting systems, you have to, the main pillar of your accounting system is something called a chart of accounts. That is the foundation of an accounting system. So good thought should go into preparing the chart of accounts. In this particular example, this is a section, a small example of one of my company's chart of accounts. This is the revenue aspect of the chart of accounts, and in our chart of accounts, the earned revenues start on the account number 8, section 8, rather. So under revenues, we have coach and job interview prepping as a revenue item. Guidance counseling as a product services, homework guidance, resume and cover letter, temporary worker, non-skilled, and so forth and so forth. So by having it, you're structuring your organization, you're making that foundation for your books, and so you should be have an understanding of this, and then just turn it over to accountants or whatever. You need to understand your business as well. And I notice like a lot of at least the ones I do pro bono work for, some of them have no clue. And they think it's the accountant's responsibility. Actually, the accountant is there to help you, but you have to have a solid foundation as well, and understanding your business setup and so forth. And I think it's a big misunderstanding that some folks don't actually try to, put themselves. If you own a company, you have to understand a lot of things as well, not just leave it up to other people. Other people is there to assist and help you and make your job easier, but at the end of the day, it's your company, and you're responsible for it at the end of the day. This is another example of our chart of accounts. This is the liabilities section, short-term liabilities. And what you can do when you set up your chart of accounts, you can have your the description and actually the explanation of what the account is for. If you have a policy guide in that, you can actually refer to a policy number. If you have a separate policy document, and then a procedure document, the procedures to follow and so forth. So in this case, we have two different types of payables. So we have trade accounts payable, we have normal accounts payable. And somebody might say, what is the difference? So in our explanation, we give an explanation of what is the difference and what we use it for. Trade accounts payables are related directly to a company's primary operations. So example of trade creditors are suppliers for raw materials, suppliers of the inventories and so forth. So I would not put, for example, when I have to pay turnover tax is not a trade accounts payable. It could be a other payable, other accounts payable, but it's nothing to do with clients. Clients in our setup is trade accounts payable. That's why we have trade in front. And then accounts payable, there's a normal accounts payable. We book stuff like that's not really trade related. We book it under that. But that's how we have it internally set up. It doesn't have to be the same way for other companies and so forth. And then you have accrued liabilities such as net salaries payable, wage salaries, so on and so forth. This is a snapshot of our accounts, chart of accounts. Of course, every business is different. At the same time, you can also have a personal chart of accounts. In the case of a budget, you have a personal budget. And what that would look like is, for example, if you see this one here, it is if you look at that under expenses for a personal, personal budget. Even a budget have a chart of accounts, so to speak. So you would have on the housing expenses, you will put down, for example, rent, telephone, and so forth. Transportation category, you have a number of different accounts below what you want to book towards. So it will be insurance for the vehicle, licenses, maintenance, repairs. Then they have the food categories and so forth. This is an example of a personal budget. But even within that, you also have a chart of accounts, so how you intend to allocate and book your expenses within your personal budget account. So even when you do a personal budget, it's actually done kind of helping you already for your business when it comes to now business accounts. You know what I mean? So if you're versed in personal accounts, it really helps when it comes to your business setup and whatever. So I always recommend persons to start off with a personal accounts. If you can handle your financial affairs, your budgeting at home, and your personal life or whatever, when it comes to the business, it's a piece of cake. But oftentimes people don't do that, and of course, that's why a lot of small and medium sometimes get into problems with this. In Dutch, they say papier is geduldig, or paper is patience, and in business, that is also the key. So what I'm going to do now, before I get into the business planning aspects, we're going to actually play the first video. Like I said, the first video is Ray Dalio, and he's talking about it happens through history. And just to show you, that history always tend to repeat itself. And so he would kind of go through that, and then we can get into some fun stuff with the business planning aspect with another video, and then I'm going to show you some checklists and so forth when it comes to business planning.
There are cycles. There are debt cycles. There's money and credit, and then there's real economic activity. Think about it the following: that what is happening is a cycle that began in 1945. We began a new monetary system. The world created the dollar as the world's currency at the end of World War II. And then we began a debt cycle. And spending power comes from money and credit. And so central banks create money and credit. And we have the world's most powerful central bank because the dollar is the world's currency. And we began a cycle. And that cycle allowed more and more stimulation, but we accumulated more and more debt. And the ability to do that diminishes as interest rates get closer to zero, because usually they stimulate by cutting interest rates. And when the interest rates hit zero, central banks have to print more money and buy more financial assets, which they did in 2008 the way they did it in 1933. And then the economy picks up on that, and we create more money and debt, and then you have a downturn. Now, this downturn came because of a virus, but whether it came for a virus or for any other reason, it's an economic downturn in which the central bank it has a limited ability to be stimulative. So think of it this way. Every individual, every company, every country has a certain amount of income and a certain amount of expenses and then a certain amount of savings. And when the income falls so that it's low, maybe even below the expenses, they have to dig into their savings. And so what we're experiencing now is with a lot of debt, there was a fall in income that, and a lot of people and a lot of countries and a lot of companies don't have an adequate amount of savings. And so that's where the financial crisis comes from. If the virus never comes back again, think of it as like a tsunami that has produced, it recedes and there's still damage, and there's financial damage. And so what we see now are holes in income and holes in balance sheets. And then you're seeing the central bank, the world central bank, the Federal Reserve, fill it in for Americans, try to fill it in for Americans. So you're seeing unprecedented amounts of creation of government debt, borrowing money, because where does it get the money from? It borrows from the Federal Reserve, and then it gives that money out to fill in those holes. So that's in the process that's happening. Very similar to, almost identical to March of 1933 when Roosevelt did the same thing. And it's happening at a time like back in the Great Depression when there were relatively large wealth gaps. And because of those large wealth gaps, there are more political gaps, and there's going to be probably a lot more arguing about how the wealth pie should be divided. And so that's the mechanics, and it's happened through history. So figure, in every place there are these holes. And the United States, because 70% of the world's transactions, buying and selling, and about 70% of the storing of wealth outside the country, reserves and the like, is in US dollars. So the US has a monopoly on those dollars, almost. There's a European central bank, much smaller. There's a Japanese central bank, much smaller. China has a central bank. They could take care of the Chinese. But by and large, we're living in a world economy, because if you want to buy things, you pretty much have to buy them in dollars. Now, what's happening now is that the United States production of dollars is largely going to Americans, and that those who have financial holes that are often in dollars, there's about $60 trillion of debt. In other words, it's owed in dollars, that is owed by non-Americans. And as a result of that, they need dollars. And it's going to be much more difficult for them to get dollars to pay that debt. That's one of the big things that's going on. So in Europe, it's a bit better than that. They're going through a similar process. In China, they can manage that. Japan can manage that. They also have savings, large savings. You can measure it in reserves. But a lot of the rest of the world is going to have to look to its own balance sheet. And it's going to look, some countries, you could look to their savings, you could look to their reserves, and you say, how much do they have in savings? Even the rich countries. Think about oil producing countries. Their revenues are a lot less than their expenses. And then they have savings, quite substantial savings. But that savings is going to have to be drawn down. They're going to have to sell assets and draw that down. And so a lot of the world will not be protected. The primary protection mechanism for doing this is the IMF. And the IMF has about $1 trillion in assets. And now they're arguing about how much money should be put out for supporting, the G20 countries. How much would they chip in to support it? And it's unlikely to be very much. So those other places are going to have a shortage of hard currency. They manufacture their own currencies, of course, but those are not widely accepted. They're not widely accepted for international transactions, and they're not widely accepted for savings. And so that diminishes the value. When they print those currencies, that diminishes the value of those currencies because there's not that much demand. And so I think it's going to be very difficult for for those countries. There are two kinds of inflation. There's the supply and demand inflation. In other words, when the demand for something is high and there's not enough of it, it goes up in price. And then there's monetary inflation. Monetary inflation means that you print a lot of money, and even though the economy can be very weak, you can have a monetary inflation because the supply of money and credit increases so much faster than the goods and services, even though there's not much demand for that. So it'll depend on which country you're in. All this printing of money and credit right now in the United States is to fill in holes in the balance sheets. So in and of itself, rather than causing a higher level of inflation in a place like the United States or Europe or Japan, what it's going to do is reduce a greater amount of deflation, and because it's just filling in those holes. However, we should talk about what is the value of money, what is the storehold of wealth. But when you get into other countries, that's not true. So they will have the printing of their own money. It won't be in much demand. And yes, there is a significant likelihood that they will experience monetary inflation, even while the world has a shortage of demand. We estimate that the amount of losses in the United States, in terms of actual losses, is in the vicinity of about $5 trillion, and that the losses in the world is a bit over $20 trillion. And then, of course, it differs from, so you just can't put that number out. You've got to get it in the right places. Right now, I would say it's still short in the United States and not getting necessarily in the right places. And in the rest of the world, it's still significantly short. And so as the world is intertwined, the balance sheet problems and the income problems of other places are going to matter, even if the virus did not play any role in the future. Of course, there's some likelihood, significant likelihood that it will. That's a whole other subject. But it looks like the amount still isn't enough, and worse so in the rest of the world than it is in the United States. And it's not necessarily all getting in the right hands at the right speed, so it's going to be difficult. I believe in the capitalist profit-making system because it's the best allocation of resource, and it creates if it creates equal opportunity, it's great. Because if the revenue that comes in is not greater than the expenses, so in other words, what you're putting out is not greater than what you're taking in to make it, the system reallocates resources, and it also brings capital to those who can do that. But it's not complete in that there are dimensions, a lot of dimensions.
Yes, so that was Redalio. I think it got cut off for some reason. I'm not too sure what happened there. But he was basically talking about history, and this is not a new phenomenon. Even without the COVID, this phenomenon would have actually still come about. And the good thing about it is he's mentioning, the aspect of income, expenses, and if your income is below your expenses, you have to draw on savings. That's if you have savings at all. And so in a corporation is almost the same aspect as well. In a corporation, the savings would be sort of the reserve, so to speak, where you put aside some reserves or some of that profit as reserves and so forth for a rainy day, so to speak. So it's not only a function of in your personal life, it's also a function of in businesses as well. You understand? So what you do in your personal life is also reflection. If you have a business, it'll be reflection within your business. Usually, if you cannot manage properly in your personal life, it's kind of difficult to also do it um, in a business setting, or unless you have a strong team. And to have a strong team means you also have to pay good money to a strong team as well. So if you have that, and depending on the size of your business, of course, it's a no-brainer. However, if you're a small business and whatever starting out, to pay those type of persons, it can be quite costly. So you just can't sometimes afford to have that team that you would like. You know what I mean? So you really have to analyze your situation, your strengths, what type of business it is, and so forth. And indeed, starting a business is not that easy. But if you do proper planning and do your research, you might you might determine, that hey, maybe the business I was planning to start, um, hey, it might not be a worthwhile thing to do after doing your little homework and so forth. In any business, you have to know your demographics. So, end of the day, I once read, someone said, I don't know the recipe for establishing a successful business, but I do know the recipe for a business will be disastrous. And that is if you try to please everyone. So in other words, you have to know your target market. Not everyone will gravitate towards your product, or not everyone you want to service either. You have to have a target audience and focus on that target audience as well. So you have to know who you're targeting, age group, if they're in a certain income bracket or whatever. So you really have to know that. To try to target too broadly, can be a bit challenging depending on what it is you're doing. And so um, okay, so you might not have, you have to know your target audience, and so you have to know how to cater towards your target audience. I think we're having some little technical issue with the other video. So what I will do, I will go ahead with some other aspects here. The video was actually talking about business planning, and I chose that particular video because the lady, she started off bad. Actually, she didn't start off the way it's recommended to, and she just jumped into it and figured out. I mean, she eventually got successful after a long struggle, but she was able to get out of it, and she had some great pointers. So in that respect, I wanted to show her side of the story. And of course, there's no one fit kind of strategy, but there are general things that you have to have in your business plan. And of course, like the mission, the vision, objective, those things, and marketing aspect and so forth. And so those are just basic elements. And so you have to also understand the BI triangle, like I mentioned before as well. So the core, you have to establish that core, and then of course you have the normal aspects within. All of them are equally important. So that team, so the core is of course the team, leadership, and the mission. And you never forget that. You always have to have that mission, leadership, and team. And then the other components that helps with that, is within the BI triangle, of course. The product is just one aspect. And so not because you have a great product, there's a lot of great products, like I said already. And so the product is just one component, small component actually. That's why a lot of persons prefer to have a franchise, because a franchise have all the systems and all those things in place already. And once you learn the booklet and the training, you got the training, it's easy to manage such a business because the system is already in place for you as well. You didn't have to go create it like a McDonald's, a Burger King, a Pizza Hut, or a Domino's, or whatever. That system is already in place for you. Of course, you have to pay the franchise company, of course, and so forth. But if you can't do it yourself, you can have someone have something that established and you buy into that. That's another possibility as well, as opposed to trying to create that by yourself. I mean, if you can do it, it's great, because then you can also franchise your concept, and of course, make it very profitable. But not everyone is gifted to do such a thing. So until that video gets ready to go, I'm going to continue here. So I'm gonna share my screen again, and there's a checklist that you can actually. Oh wait, I didn't share the screen. I forgot about that. Let me go here to share screen. Start sharing. Oh wait, 1 second here. Share screen. There we go. Okay, let me just double check to see if this thing is on. So in this is a particular template that I sometimes use depending on the client, and it talks about a checklist for how to write a business plan. So it says here, you wouldn't drive 2,000 miles without a map. So don't start a business without writing a business plan. It is your roadmap to success. Okay, so this is a checklist for how to write a business plan. Now it says that business planning helps to ensure business success, and as the blueprint for your business, a business plan is a critical element because it showcases your business vision, product or service, marketing strategies, and financial projections. Remember, a business plan outlines the complete operating framework of your business by detailing who you are, why you're in business, what you do, how you do it, where you operate, how you will generate profits, your customers, who your customers are, and why your business is important. Use the checklist below to measure where you are in the process of collecting the necessary material. So a checklist is always good in flight training, and also pilots also use checklists. It's a very handy tool, and especially when I'm doing my little training on my simulator, that's all I use. I use checklists for everything, and it's really helpful. So let's begin charting your path to writing your business plan. So the first checkpoint is preparing to write a business plan. So the first question is, I have decided to type a business plan. I have decided the type of business plan to write, yes or no. I have a business plan started or in progress or complete, yes or no. I know the audience of my business plan, yes or no. I know the need my business provides to the community, yes or no. So these are some things you have to ask yourself. And if you don't know it, then you have to really check. Whatever you say no to, you really have to go back and try to make that turn into yes before you proceed. Then I know my potential customers, yes or no. I know where I will get the financial resources to start or grow my business, yes or no. And then the next checkpoint is writing my business plan. So the company description section. I have a mission statement, yes or no. So if you don't have a mission statement, make sure you get one. So whatever's no again, you have to resolve it to become yes. I know my attainable business goals and objectives, yes or no. Is my product or service new and exciting, yes or no. I know how my product is developed or service is provided, yes or no. I know who will buy my product or service, yes or no. I know how my business will compare to competitors in my industry, yes or no. I know how my business will manage foreseeable industry changes, yes or no. Very interesting question. I know how my company management is organized and who makes the decisions, yes or no. Do I anticipate my business management structure changing, yes or no. I know the values that drive my business, yes or no. I know how many employees I have, what they do, and how they are paid, yes or no. I know the principal members of my business and their roles, yes or no. I can include a brief resume on each key manager within my business, yes or no. I know the legal structure of my business, such as licenses and permits my company operates with or needs, yes or no. And then the research part of the business plan section. I know my industry, yes or no. I know my industry's current size and what share of the market I will have. Yes or no? I have my competitors in my. I know my competitors in my industry. Yes or no? I know my direct competitors in my industry. Yes or no? Are there regulations that apply to my industry? Yes or no? Like some industries require a hindrance permit as an example, depending on what it is. Could be like, for example, someone who does painting of cars or whatever. I'm assuming would need a hindrance permit and so forth. So this is the type of the questions you have to ask, and so that's an extra cost to get and extra time to. I know the trends in my industry, so the growth, consumer preferences, product development, and so forth. Yes or no? I know how and where my company fits in the industry. Yes or no? I know the advantages and disadvantages I have over my competitors. Yes or no? Very important question. I know the barriers to entering this industry. So example is it high initial capital cost, unique technology, customer need for brand recognition, etc. So you have to understand that barriers to entry is sometimes important, or I would say is important, because if a business is very easy to get into, you wouldn't want to, even if you start such a business, you wouldn't want to stay in it that long. You probably want to develop the business, make a good system, have it working well, and then sell it to the next party and move on. Because barriers to entry, if it's very easy to get into the business, of course, profitability will be eroded. For example, I'm looking at sort of investment opportunity with a group of guys, and they already have like small luxury hotels in Cancun. The problem with Cancun is a very hot spot, and of course, every investor and developer want a piece of that pie. So, of course, they came in and saturate the market. Barriers to entry was not that difficult, so they enter that market. So now these guys are looking for other opportunities in up and coming growing spots, and they have identified a number of them. But the first four that they want to start with is Turks and Caicos, Costa Rica, Virgin Islands, and Belize. And so you can see that what they did smart when everyone was running to Cancun, they looked at opportunities in those islands, and they look at not in expensive areas, with areas where persons were not really looking at in terms of the within the country, the spots. So they got things very cheap in terms of the land aspect, and so now they can develop into luxury small boutique hotels before it gets too saturated. So in other words, they always say skate to where the puck is going to be in hockey. That way it was. So, and that's what these guys are doing. So so even when the barriers of entry is very easy to get into, you have to foresee that and have a plan to eventually exit and go on to the next thing. And some people sometimes don't foresee this. It says here, I know the demographics of my current prospective customers. Yes or no? I know what customers buy and why. Yes or no? My product is accessible to customers. Yes or no? I know the price my customers will pay for my product or service. Will my customers prefer my product over the alternatives? Yes or no? I know the market segments or groups that are more likely to buy my product. Yes or no? And then I had another checkpoint is the product service line section. It says I know what product or service my business provides. Yes or no? I have a pricing structure. Some people don't consider that, but the pricing structure is very, very important. I noticed in St. Martin, a lot of fly-by-night contractors or handymen or whatever don't know how to price properly. And that's a big, big problem. You have to know your pricing structure and how to price things properly, because one, you don't want to overprice, and number two, underprice. So you have to know how to calculate this. And unfortunately, a lot of skilled people or whatever just don't have that skill set, or never took a course or whatever in terms of pricing. How do you price? I remember when I was doing Bedrijfs economy, or in this case, if I literally translate it exactly, business economics. One of our courses were dealing with exactly that. How do you price? How do you price? Products and so forth, and so forth. So it's not something that you can just think of outside of the box. It's something that you have to have an idea about and understand your business model and so forth, your expenditures and whatever. It's something that you should take a course on if you want to be a serious business owner, because that pricing model is very, very, very important, of course. It helps you know what maximum you can price to stay competitive and so forth. So there's a number of benefits to knowing that. I know what factors give me a competitive advantage or disadvantage, yes or no. I keep an inventory. Will I keep an inventory? Yes or no. I know my suppliers. Yes or no. I know the life cycle stage of my product or service. Very important again. Yes or no. I am performing or planning research and development activities. Yes or no. I know what intellectual property rights I have for my product or service. Yes or no. And then the other checkpoint is marketing and sales strategies. It says, I know my plan to grow my business, yes or no. I know how to communicate with my customers, yes or no, very important again. I know how I will sell my product or service, yes or no. I have identified my market segment, yes or no. I have tailored tailored product offerings, prices, distribution, promotional efforts, and services toward identified market segments. Yes or no. I have considered changes in customer needs and the business environment as well as emerging opportunities and threats. Yes or no. I have identified new markets that I can successfully. I always have a problem pronouncing that word. Successfully target. Yes or no. So again, I have identified new markets that I can successfully target. So that's what these guys were doing. I was mentioning earlier. They have identified and they started to do that a while now because they foresee the saturation happening in Cancun, Mexico. And so this is something you also have to foresee as well. You can see it with when remember we had camera places used to take pictures of you way before we had the phones and whatever the case is. And then if you didn't foresee the trend of technology coming about, if you had stayed in that business or whatever, I think a lot of people did, and of course they got obsolete. So you always have to be able to think 10 steps ahead. Even though you run a successful business now, you have to be able to think 10 steps ahead to see what the potential threats could be in the future, and also try to identify new markets as well. Then you have another checkpoint, which is the funding request section. I know my current and future 5 years funding requirements. Yes, no. This is more the financial part of the business plan, I am assuming here. I know how I will intend to use the funds I receive. Yes or no. I know my strategic financial situational plans for the future. Yes or no. I have completed a projected balance sheet statement. Yes or no. And then they have the financial projections section. Talks about I have completed a cash flow projection statement. Yes or no. I have completed a profit and loss income projection statement. Yes or no. I have aligned my financial projections with my funding requests. Yes or no. Another section is the executive summary section. I have included a summary of my business. Yes or no. I have included a summary of my products, services that I sell or plan to sell. Yes or no. I have included my mission statement. Yes or no. I have included a summary of my management and organizational structure. I have included a summary of my target market and ideal customer. I have included a summary of the future of my business and my industry. I have included a summary of my banking relationships and information regarding my current investors. I have included a summary of my financial data and projections. Yes or no. And then the last part there, as part of this template, it says assembling my business plan. I have appendices in my business plan that include materials needed to support what I claim in my business plan. Yes or no. I have a cover page. Yes or no. I have a table of contents. Yes or no. And then in the notes, I have a note section that says use the space below to record any other preparation, getting started, or ideas you have for your business plan. So this is about 5 pages here. You can see, so there's a lot of work that goes into a business plan. And it's amazing sometimes that I've done business plans in the past. I never really made a profit from a business plan because when you tend to do a business plan for folks, they think it's a little bit of work, and they may pay the deposit, and then at the end they don't want to pay the balance. Of course, in my softness, I had a tendency to give it to them still, and hoping that it would pay the balance. But yeah, sometimes that doesn't work out. And so I'm very reluctant to actually do business plans for persons, unless maybe they're going to pay me all the money up front, because there's a lot of work that goes into it. The financial aspect is just one. That's one aspect. Is the other aspects is much more important as well. It's the elucidation, the research, the marketing plan, and so forth. How you plan to market? Are you going to internet and all that aspect is a lot of work. And then the financial aspect comes out of that. So most people think it's just business plan is financial. No, a lot of it is your ideas, your concepts, and that wording aspect is the business plan, and the financials come is a process that comes out of what you're telling and saying and so forth. And so people have that misconception. And indeed, if you really want to take advantage of this new loan program, I think you should, because with a structure like 65% being a grant and the rest is a loan, I mean, I don't think you're going to get an opportunity like that in a long time. So I would say take advantage of this NRPB loan program via, I think WIB and Q credits are actually the ones you can approach to get started with that. But of course, you have to have that business planning down pack. Make sure think of the product, be creative. I will say one of the stumbling blocks is that PayPal issue. I'm stumbling with that right now. I found a beautiful platform to give training online and so forth, all types of training, including business planning, entrepreneurship, and those type of things. However, PayPal is the stumbling block. The platform only accepts PayPal and I think some other thing. The other thing, I would have to establish a company in the United States, and if I do that, why would I? If I establish a company in the States, then it's a United States company. There's nowhere I will report income here, and then that's a loss for St. Martin. So you see, I might have to go that route, but it is what it is, folks. Unfortunately, we couldn't get to play that business plan video. Hopefully, we'll have it queued up for next week. If the gentleman from Holland do decide to come on, he having some night shifts and so forth in Holland, so it's very tiresome for him to be able to come on the program due to the time difference. He did promise me when the night, when his shift changes up, he will come on. So if he does come on next week, of course, I won't go into that video again. I will just have the interview with him. So I want to thank you for listening. And I'll see you again next week in another informative program. Bye bye.